Hey everyone, and welcome to the tile scrolling game series episode 9. This series is actually the second largest one on my channel. That's actually really crazy. But yeah, anyway, today we'll be doing some miscellaneous things. Is that how you say that? Miscellaneous. Is that even a word? I think I've said it too much. It doesn't even sound like a word anymore. We're going to be doing some random small things that we didn't do earlier that need to be done, such as the darkness overlay vignette when you go under darkness, or particles when you break stuff, tile dependencies, that way there won't be floating grass and things. Make sure you drop a like button, that doesn't even make sense, and hit the subscribe button and comment down below. But anyway, let's get right into this tutorial. Okay, so let's really quick go over the sprites and costumes and new stuff that I have. So the first thing that I have is called particles, and this contains particles. Wow. The first costume is a super high resolution 6x5 pixel blob with 2 gray pixels. This is so fancy. And then I have dirt underscore break particle, and this is for when you break any material that's marked as a dirt material. So that would be stuff like the grass block, the dirt block, and like the clay. And this is important that you do underscore break particle because that's how our system recognizes these particles as a breaking one. Then we have the other 3 materials that follow the same naming conventions with the name of it and then the underscore break particle. This one's for wood when you break the wood. Then we have stone break particle and foliage break particle. After that, we have a sprite called overlay, and it is a vignette dark thing that is cool. It's just a gradient that will darken the screen when you get in a shadowy place. All it is a nice box that has a gradient for no color in the middle and then a dark bluish color in the outside. I speak as good as a monkey. Okay, so let's start in the overlay because that's probably going to be the quickest thing that I'll get through in this episode. So let's go ahead and add a when green flag clicked and then a hide. Then we'll go ahead and add a when I receive hide loading screen. So this will happen after we finish loading. We'll make sure that this thing is in the very center of the screen, which is 0, 0. Then we'll show the thing forever, make it transparent depending on the player light level. So first let's go to front so it's in front of everything, and then before that we can set the ghost effect to the global sprite brightness. Now this won't work good, so to show that, let's go ahead and say the global sprite brightness, so that way you can kind of see it. So you basically want it to be to where 0 is the darkest and 100 is completely gone. So we need to convert it to where it's kind of backwards, because right now it's negative and weird. You can see the sprite brightness here, but then if we go under here, it goes to -20. So it kind of needs to be inverted, because right now it should be slightly transparent versus right now it should be completely transparent so you can't see it. So to kind of convert that, let's say the global sprite brightness times 1.66. And for now, let's just set the ghost effect to 0 for testing. So now you can see it's pretty much the same. It just goes up to -33. Then we want to round that so that way it's not the crazy decimal number. And then last but not least, we'll take all that plus 100. So that way it's nice and big. So you can see now that it should say something that looks correct. So right now its transparency is 100%, which is perfect. But if we go into the darkness, you can see right now it goes down to 80%, or if we go in the darker place, it's 34. Okay, so you can see that it's actually correctly changing. So now we can just move this stuff into the set and take out the say, and hopefully it should be not visible on the surface, but when it gets darker, the vignette gets darker. So here we go, it's not visible, but if we go under the ground and go here, look at that, it fades in. Alrighty, this is great. So now we have a dynamic vignette thingy that will fade the screen. So that looks really cool. You can see it around the edges, and then once we go here, it fades out. Okay, so let's do some tile dependency now. So basically what that means is that each time we break a block, it'll check to make sure that the tile can be in the air or not, and if it can't be in the air, such as like the grass or whatever, it'll delete the tile if there's nothing underneath it. So first we need to add this to the tile meta. So in the create tile meta, we need to right click and edit this, and then add a new label called required on ground, like so. Then we want to add a colon to that, and copy all of that, add an input called required on ground, and just change that to camel case. And now click OK. Now for each of these tile, we can fill it out if it's required on the ground. So the air is not, so we can add false. The bedrock is not, the stone is not, the dirt is not, the grass is not, the long grass tile is, the flower also is because it will break it, there's nothing underneath it, wood is not, leaves are not, leaf log are not, clay is not, torches are, that way you can't place a torch in the air, bedrock dirt is not, ladder is not, tin ore is not, coal ore, copper ore, silver ore, and gold ore, or not. And of course you can change everything here. Then to make sure this actually works, we want to add tile data with the ID here of the required on ground. And you know, this kind of bothers me. This isn't really an ID, so let's edit this and just do add tile ID and then rename this one to data and click OK. Then do the same thing for here, the add item data, delete that ID there and just do data like this. And that's much better because it's just adding that specific data to it. And wait, we need to do the colon. Okay, let's edit both of those and add the colons in. So now let's open up the tile meta and start the game and make sure that we have that new key in there. You can see that each one has at the very end false for the air, so it's bedrock and all those, but if we scroll down to like the flower say, it says true here, and that's if it's required to be placed on a solid block. So we need to add 6 to the ID position to get if it's required on the ground or not. Okay, so now in the tile manager, we can go ahead and find the when I receive refresh tiles, and we need to make a new custom block called tile dependencies and click run screen without refresh and then OK. Now we want to run the tile dependencies right here. So we want to check if it needs to be placed on a solid block. If item 1 of the tile meta, and instead of the item 1 we want to add on 6 here because that's the amount we need to shift it by, and then we want to get the ID, so item number of thing in ID grabber for the tile meta, and instead of the thing we want to do item 1 of the tile grid and change this to the tile list ID of tile grid and put that in there. Now to test this, you can go ahead and say it right here. So hopefully it should, for the grass and stuff like the flowers, it should say true because it needs to be placed on the ground. Kind of hard to see, but it looks like there's a true around the grass. You know, a better way to test this would be checking if all that equals to true, then we say something like hello, whatever. That means that only the things that need to be placed on solid ground will say hello whenever we refresh tiles. Let's go ahead and go down here, mine up a block. Yep, look at that, all these tiles say hello. So now what we can do is we want to replace item tile list ID in tile grid with 1, so it deletes itself. Then we need to create the tile drop, so go into the selector and find the create item drop right here, pull that into the tile manager and put that right here. Now instead of selector X and selector Y, we can change that to the tile X and tile Y, so it creates it right on top of it. Then we want to actually run that block, so where is it? Right here, create item drop. So now in the selector, we can go ahead and scroll around until we find the key for finding the tile drop. So we need to add 5. So let's go ahead and pull this into here. Now we can put this inside of here, and instead of the ID, we can just duplicate this right here to get the ID. So this will just return the drop. So hopefully if we've done everything correctly, it should create a drop and delete the tile if there's a dependency. So if we break this, that didn't work. It just instantly broke all of the tiles. Oh, that's because we're not actually detecting if there's nothing below. Put an and in here. So what we can do is check if the tile below the current tile does not have tile collision. So if that's true, then we can do it. We want to do 2 in here because that's how much we can shift it for tile collision, +1 and then +2. Then we want to make sure it's the actual tile below us. So we can subtract off 1 from the tile list ID right here. So if that equals to false, so that means that it does not have collision, then put that in there. Okay, so now if we go ahead and check this out, it should only break the ones without blocks under it. So right now there's some grass here, cool, and then if we break this log, yep, nothing happens. But if we break this one, yes, look at that, it breaks the tile above it. Okay, so that's working, but we're getting a weird item that doesn't actually exist in our inventory, so I'm not exactly sure why. It has to be be something to do with this. You know what? Let's go ahead and test something out really quick. Let's go ahead and add an input called tile ID to this tile dependencies, and then do a colon tile ID with a colon like this, and click OK. Now for the tile ID, we can just go ahead and duplicate this right there. Now in here, we can take out all of this and just do the tile ID. Then for this one, we can also do the tile ID like this, +5. So if we go ahead and test this out, maybe this will actually work. I have a feeling that it's changing in between. So now you can see that, look at this, it's actually working. If I mine this block underneath, here we go, it actually breaks the correct one. Now we can actually make tiles have dependencies. Say we make the grass block have to be on the ground. You can see that working fine now, but if we mine the block under it, look at that, the grass breaks itself. Cool, so this is actually working correctly. That's awesome. Okay, let's change that back because I don't want grass to have to be placed on dirt. Let's make the particles real quick. So add a when I receive, generate world like this. We can go ahead and do hide. Then we need two variables for the position. So make a for the sprite only variable called particle X. Copy all of this and click OK. And then make another one called particle Y. That way we have two variables for the X and Y. And we need to go ahead and reset those to 0 in the very beginning. Then we need to make a list called spawn particle like this. And this will, wait, did I spell that wrong? And we need to delete all of that in the beginning like that. Okay, so now that we have it all resetting, we can go ahead and actually create the particles. When I start as a clone, we can hide at first. We want to set the X to the item 1 of spawn particle, set the particle Y to the number 2. Then we need a variable for the ID, so make a for the sprite only variable called particle ID and set that particle ID in the very beginning to the number 3 like this. Then we want to switch costume to the particle ID. Then we want to set the size to 500% because it's really small because it's pixel art. Clear the graphic effects, wait 0 seconds, so that way it waits 1 frame perfectly, and then it'll show. So after it's set up, it'll wait a frame and show. So in the player, go ahead and make a block called spawn dust particle like this. Particle, oh my gosh, I can't spell. Part Y, par. Make sure you click run screen without refresh and then OK. Now we want to run the spawn particle dust right here or above it. Then we want to go ahead and replace item 1 of spawn particle with the X position, which is X like this. Replace the 2 with the Y variable, and then replace 3, which is the ID, with dust, which is the costume name. Make sure those match. Then we want to create a clone of the particle, which we can search up here, particles. Now in the particle, I forgot one thing. We need to repeat 3 times and add blank in the very beginning to the spawn particle list. So just add blank to spawn particles. So that way there's some to replace. Now, if we go ahead and test this out, whenever we turn around, some particles should pop up if we've done everything correctly. So that doesn't look like it's working. I see the clone count increasing. Oh wait, it's in the bottom left here because I didn't position it correctly. Okay, well that was really dumb. I forgot to actually position the particles with the go to and stuff. So inside of the item drops, we can just yoink this block and put it into particles. Then we can go ahead and just pull in the go to and put it in the particles. Now we can go ahead and do a when I receive the tick position tiles, go to all of that. Now we don't actually have the X here, so you can replace that with particle X and the Y with particle Y. Then you can delete these for the sprite only X and Y. Now if it's off screen, which is in this hide, we want to just delete it. That way it doesn't take up performance instead of hiding. Okay, so now if we try this out, you should see that we have particles spawning at our player whenever we turn. You can see we go and then we turn. Yes, look at this, there's this little cloud wherever we turn. So those are just some particles spawning. And if they go off screen, they actually get deleted, you can see here, which is cool. Alrighty, so now we have some particles spawning. So let's go ahead and make the dust particles move and all that stuff. So let's go ahead and just do an if else and check if the particle ID contains underscore break particle. This is where it's important to name it correctly, because if it detects this underscore break particle in the name, then it will automatically run the code for the breaking. Otherwise, it'll just make it into something else. So that's why it's important to do that. Now let's make a custom block to randomize a particle. So make a custom block called randomize particle like this with a colon, then do position offset like this with a colon, then an input offset, a label called size offset, and then an input called size. And you can click run without screen refresh, and then OK. Now in the beginning here, let's randomize the particle with 5 for the position and 25 for the size. Now in here, we can change the particle X by pick random 1 to 10, and then put a minus in here, and put the offset in the right, and then the offset here. Not there, there. So 0 minus offset and then offset here. This one is just negative offset and this one's normal offset. So it'll just change it a little bit. And then we change a particle Y by the same thing. Last but not least, we change the size by duplicate all of this and then change the offset to the size. Last but not least, we can go to the front layer. Now let's make a variable called y velocity, or yvel for short, and we can go ahead and set the y velocity to pick random 1 to 2. So each particle will move at a different speed. Then we want to repeat 25 times, change the ghost effect by 4, that way it fades out, and we can change the particle y, which is right here, by that yvel variable. That way it moves up. Last but not least, we can turn 2 degrees clockwise. It doesn't really matter which way, you can do whatever you want. Okay, so now if we start this game, the particles should have some movement and they should be random size and move around a little bit. Oh man, look at that. That is so cool. So you can see now that we can turn and they kind of float up and look awesome. Okay, now to make them spawn at the player's feet, go into the player and find the spawn particle, and instead of doing the Y, we want to do the Y minus 22. So this should make it spawn at the very bottom of the ground. So you can see now if we walk and make some dust, here we go, they're actually on the feet. So that's kind of cool. So now let's do the break particles. So first let's just do the movement in the particles before we make them spawn. So we can go ahead and use the randomize particle and change the offset to 10, so that way it moves around a bit more, and the size offset to 50. Then we want to duplicate all of this and set the y velocity to pick random 1 to 5. Then we'll take out that and then repeat 10 times, change the ghost effect by 10, duplicate the repeat thing and put it above here, and then change this to a repeat pick random 50 to 150, and we'll go ahead and make it do gravity. So go ahead and make a custom block called particle gravity, and then click OK and run particle gravity in there. Now for the gravity, we're going to use the same collision that we use for the item drop and stuff. So let's go ahead and change the y velocity by negative 0.5, so it goes down a little bit. Then we want to go ahead and go into the item drop and pull in this collision block right here and put that in the particles, and then pull the get current tile into the particles as well. Now in the particle gravity, we can go ahead and do collision 0. Then we want to do the y velocity for the y. Then we want to do an if else, checking if colliding is greater than 0, which means we've hit something. We want to go ahead and set the y velocity to 0. Otherwise, we can change the particle y by the y velocity so it keeps going down. Now for the collision block, you can go ahead and take out this x here, delete the x and y variables, and put the particle x in here and particle y here. And you don't need to do the minus thing here, that's just for the tile drop. And then let's go ahead and rename these variables so that way they're not the drop. So we'll rename the drop to the particle, and you can copy the word particle to replace all the other ones. So particle tile ID, then particle tile index, particle tile x, particle tile y. Okay, so now we can actually test this out. Now to do that, we want to go ahead and go into the player say and duplicate all of this. And if we click on that, it'll make dust. So let's just really quick do dirt underscore break particle just for testing. And we'll just do the x and y. And now if we click on this, you should see some dirt. Yes, look at this. Well, that kind of works. It spawns the right costume, but it's doing the dust stuff. Okay, I'm going to copy the underscore break particle part. Maybe I spelled something wrong, so I'll do dirt underscore break particle. Nope, that still doesn't work. Oh, I see why, because in particle gravity, I did the particle y. We want to do yvel here. Okay, so let's try this now. If we go back and do all this, yes, look at this, it falls down. Okay, this is much better. Really quick, let's wrap this in a repeat 10 just to see what it would be like. So maybe we broke a dirt tile, boom, look at that, it falls down. And then if we keep breaking the tiles, it'll actually fall down and then eventually fade out. Okay, so that was the issue. Okay, so now that we have that, we need to add the data in the tile meta to tell it what type of particle to spawn, and add a new label called particle material, like so. Then add a colon here, copy all that, and add an input particle material like this and click OK. Now let's make sure we actually add that to the tile meta. So add tile data at the very end, the particle material. Okay, so it's very important that the particle material matches the first part of the name of the particle. So what I mean by that is this one is called stone_break particle. Well, if we wanted something to spawn this stone particle, we would name it this right here, stone, without the underscore part. So right now we have foliage, wood, and dirt for our options, along with stone. So we can go ahead and go through all the tiles and then put the correct material. Air, we can go ahead and do null because it doesn't have a break tile. Same with the bedrock. Stone is obviously stone. Dirt is dirt. Grass is also grass. Then the long grasses are foliage. Then obviously the wood is wood. The leaves are foliage. And then the leaf logs are also foliage. Clay is the dirt. Torches are wood. Bedrock dirt is null because you can't actually break it. Ladder are wood. Tin ore is the stone particle. So is coal ore. So is copper, silver, and gold. Okay, so now let's make sure that it added it to the tile meta as always. So if we open up the tile meta, at the very bottom it'll say the material that it drops. So this one's null. Or if we go down to say clay, and it'll say dirt at the very bottom. So that's the particle material. Now to get that, we need to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Alrighty. Inside the selector, let's go ahead and add a custom block called create particle like this with a colon. Then do a costume like this and add an input called costume. Run screen without refresh like this and click OK. Now to get the costume, we established that we need to add 8. So we can simply duplicate this and add 8 right here. Now to actually convert that into the correct form, we need to add the underscore break particle. So go into the particles, copy the break particle, and then put that in the join like that. So that's the actual particle. Oops, I did 8 here. We need to do 7, sorry. Now in the create particles, we can repeat a pick random amount between 2 and 8. Then we can duplicate all of this. Instead of spawn tile drop, we can go ahead and do the spawn particle like this. So spawn particle. Instead of ID, we want to change this to the costume, and instead of item drop, we can do the particles. So if we've done everything correctly, hopefully when we break a tile, it should spawn a particle. Well, I broke something, because this is all messed up now. Okay, I see what I did. I need to do repeat meta number right here. I accidentally took that out. Okay, so now if we test this out, whenever we break something, it should spawn a particle. Okay, so that's dirt particles, so that's good. And then this one is foliage particles. This one is wood particles, that's foliage. Okay, this is actually working. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add in the block placing. So inside of this selector, make a new custom block called place tile with a colon, then item ID with a colon, ID. So this is the ID of the item that we need to place, and run screen without refresh. Now in the tick position tiles, we want to do the place tile and do the selected item ID, which is the ID from the inventory that we made last episode. Now in the place tile thingy, bobber, do the get current tile and check if the item 1 of tile grid changes to the selected tile index of tile grid is equal to 1, which means that it's air, and not ID is equal to empty, which means that we're hovering over an empty slot, then we won't be able to place anything. We want to check if the space is pressed. Now this will let us place blocks inside ourselves, so we want to also check and a greater than distance to player, so that's how far away the selector is from the player, is greater than the blank of blank, and change this to the tile manager, and then tile move step of tile manager. So if all those conditions are met, then we can place the tile. So go ahead and make a for all sprite variable called remove item ID like this, and this is the ID that we need to remove from the inventory. Now I don't know where that went, but I can't see it, so I'm going to reload the page. Alright, it's here now, so we can go ahead and set the removed item ID to the item number of thing and change this to item meta here, and then do the item number of ID in the ID grabber, then do the item 1 of the ID grabber for the tile meta and put that in there. So that'll give us the ID of the item. Then we want to make a broadcast remove item ID like this. Then we want to check if we have that item. So make a variable called inventory has item like this. So if the inventory has item is equal to true, Then we duplicate this, and now we need to figure out what tile each item places. So we need to add that to the item meta. So add a new entry in the item meta called place tile ID with a colon and then input ID. Now click OK, and then in the item here, add item data. Instead of speed, we can do the ID here. And wait, no, sorry, not ID. We want to do place tile ID like this, otherwise it'll get confused. Make sure you place that up there. So ID and then place tile ID. And now we can go ahead and reference the ID of the tile for each of these. So the stone here would be 3, then the dirt would be 4, so you can just go down the line and match them. So I have a little cheat sheet, so I'm gonna go ahead and just copy them. 6, then 8, then 11, then 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, null, because the wooden pickaxes and stuff don't have a placement tile. Then silver ore is 18 and the gold ore is 19. Okay, so now we can actually get these. So we need to add 3 to get the placement tile. So in the selector, we need to actually use that. So we want to duplicate all of this and change this to the item meta like this. And to actually get it, we need to add 3 to this one. So the item number of ID in the item meta plus 3 of the item meta, and we can replace that like so. Then we need to refresh the tile. So broadcast refresh tiles and wait. Okay, so now we need to actually make the remove item and stuff. So inside the tile drop, you can go ahead and add a when I receive remove tile ID if the ID is equal to sprite. That way only the sprite can do this. So the ID is equal to sprite. Then we need to make a custom block called remove item from inventory. Then add a colon here, the ID, and then click run screen without refresh and click OK. Now we want to run the remove item from inventory and then do the remove item ID. Now for the remove item from inventory, let's set the I to 0 so it starts at the beginning. Set the inventory has item to false. Repeat the length of the inventory. Then we want to duplicate this part right here, put that in there. And instead of adding 1, we want to subtract 1. Now we want to make sure that we didn't take too much out because it could be at 1. So if it's at 0, then we want to delete the slot altogether. If decoded amount is less than 1, then we want to just delete 1 of the inventory and change this to the I of inventory. Then we want to set the inventory has item to false. Otherwise, we can set the inventory has item to true. Now we refresh the inventory and all that. And at the very end, otherwise we just refresh the inventory. Okay, so if we've done everything correctly, we should be able to actually place down items in our hand. It was a lot of coding, but it should work. So I go ahead and get 1 dirt block and I press space and nothing happens. That's nice. If we take that inventory has item out, let's go ahead and test to see if the placing part works. So we get this and we do this. Okay, so the placing part is working. As you can see here, I can place any tile I want. Oh wait, on the bottom here, we also want to do refresh tiles, not inventory, and put that back in there. So the inventory has item is not being set to the correct thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and just duplicate everything from the add item because for some reason this is not working and I really don't know why. So we'll go ahead and just do replace with test like this. So if we go ahead and start this game and go into the selector and just run the 2, which is the ID of dirt, it should just replace it with test. Okay, so it replaced it with test, so that is correct. So now instead of test, we want to do all this join stuff and just do the -1 like this. Okay, so now if we try this out, hopefully it should subtract 1 from the amount. We have 3 right now, and we click on this. Okay, now we have 2, now we have 1. Okay, so it is updating, so that part's good. Now we just need to put an if else in here and check if the decoded amount is less than 1. Then we want to delete I of inventory, so it removes the slot completely, and we want to set inventory has item to false in the very beginning and set it to false here. Otherwise we can set it to true. Okay, and at the very bottom we can just take out this add altogether. Okay, so this should work in theory. I did the same thing last time, I think. So if we go into the selector and we get a couple dirt and we click on this, it removes 1, removes 2. Okay, we have 0, and then it removes it altogether. So maybe do less than 2. So now if we try this out, it should delete it once it equals to 0 instantly instead of just sitting there at 0. So if we get some dirt, we have 2 now. We remove it, we have 1, we remove it, it's gone. Okay, so that part's working good. Right now, maybe the placing should work. So if we get a dirt, we can place it. It still doesn't work. Why? You know, I'm going to try something. Let's set the remove ID up at the very top here. Maybe this will help work. So you can see if I get this, we have one of this, we can place it. Okay, it removes it from the inventory, but it doesn't actually place the tile down. Why is that? I think it's because the inventory has item is being set to false. You know, let's just test something out real quick. If I just take out this if right here and just do that, will this work? Place it. It won't let me place it. Okay, hold on. I think I know why this isn't working. Right here, we need to scroll amount 0 when we refresh in the inventory for the ID equals to sprite. That way, when we actually get an item, it updates what we're holding. Okay, I think this is gonna work. So if right now we're holding this, we press space. Oh my gosh, we can actually place it down. That was so painful. So now I have 3 of these. I can place 1 down, 2, 3. Okay, that works. Place a clay down. That works. 1, and I can place it down and it removes it from my inventory. Okay, and I ended up actually figuring out a way to where we don't even need the inventory has item. I don't really remember what that does. I'm just gonna delete it because we don't actually need it at all. So we can just change this to an if, and this works perfectly. So in the selector, it just looks like this. Okay, well, there is kind of a weird duplication glitch, so we'll probably have to make it to where you can't place the tiles with a tile dependency in midair. Otherwise, you'll be able to duplicate items like this because it's really weird, but we'll do that later because my brain hurts from recording for a long time. So thank you all so much for watching. If you did enjoy this episode, make sure you hit that like button and consider subscribing, but I do hope you enjoyed watching it. But anyway, this has been Owen, and I am out.